What do you do when betrayal isn't just your spouse's choice, but your child's too? Keep begging for love, or walk away so they finally understand what they just destroyed. My name is David Mitchell, and I manage 3 restaurants in downtown Springfield. At 38, I thought I had life figured out. Steady job, decent house, wife who still looked good in jeans, and an 8-year-old daughter who used to think I hung the moon. Used to. The morning of my birthday started like any other Tuesday. Coffee brewing, Sarah rushing around getting ready for her marketing job, Emma eating cereal while watching cartoons on her tablet. Normal. Boring. Safe. "Happy birthday, honey," Sarah said, kissing my cheek without looking up from her phone. "Sorry, big presentation today. We'll celebrate tonight, okay?" I nodded, sipping my coffee and scrolling through work emails. That's when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just a video file and 5 words. "You deserve to know this." I almost deleted it. Spam, probably. But something made me click. The video was short, maybe 30 seconds. Crystal clear footage of my wife in a hotel room with Marcus Webb, her ex-boyfriend from college. The same Marcus who'd been just a friend for the past 2 years. The same Marcus who'd been coming around more often lately, helping with projects around the house. I watched it twice, my coffee growing cold in my hands. Sarah laughing, Marcus pulling her close, both of them naked and comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times before. The timestamp showed last Thursday, the day Sarah said she was working late on that big client presentation. "Dad, you okay?" Emma's voice snapped me back to reality. "Fine, sweetheart, just work stuff." But I wasn't fine. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed until something vital broke. 20 years together, 10 married, and this is how I find out it's over? Through anonymous video evidence delivered like a birthday present? The irony wasn't lost on me. Happy birthday, David. Your gift is the truth. I went through the motions that day. Staff meetings, inventory checks, dealing with a broken freezer at the downtown location. But my mind kept replaying that video. Sarah's laugh, Marcus's hands on her. The easy intimacy that told me this wasn't their first time. When I got home that evening, Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner. She'd changed into a blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. The effort felt like salt in an open wound. "How was your day, birthday boy?" she asked, stirring something on the stove. "Educational," I said. She didn't catch the edge in my voice. Or maybe she did, and chose to ignore it. Emma ran into the kitchen, backpack still on, face flushed with excitement. "Mom, is Marcus coming over tonight? You said he might." Sarah's spoon stopped moving. "We'll see, honey. It's Dad's birthday, so—" "But Marcus promised to show me his new motorcycle." Emma bounced on her toes. "And he said we could get ice cream." I watched this exchange like a spectator at my own execution. My daughter's enthusiasm for another man. My wife's careful non-answers. The casual way they discussed him like he belonged here. "Emma, go wash your hands," I said quietly. When she left, I pulled out my phone and set it on the counter. Video paused on the first frame. Sarah and Marcus kissing. "We need to talk," I said. Sarah glanced at the phone, and I watched her face change. The color drained out of it, then rushed back in a wave of red. She didn't deny it. Didn't ask where I got it. Didn't even look surprised. "David, I can explain." "Can you? Because that looks pretty self-explanatory to me." She turned off the stove and faced me, arms crossed defensively. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think my wife is sleeping with her ex-boyfriend. I think she's been lying to me for months. I think she's been using our daughter to normalize having him around." I kept my voice level, controlled. "Which part am I wrong about?" Sarah's mouth opened and closed like she was trying out different lies, seeing which one might work. Finally, she went with partial truth. "It just happened, okay? We've been having problems. You know we have. You work all the time. You're always stressed. We barely talk anymore. Marcus listens to me. He makes me feel happy, I finished. He makes you feel happy, and I don't. She nodded, tears starting. I didn't mean for it to happen. But yes, he makes me happy in a way that we haven't in a long time. Before I could respond, Emma came running back in. She looked at Sarah's tears, then at my face, and something shifted in her expression. Like she was choosing sides in a war I didn't know we were fighting. "Are you making Mom cry?" she asked me, stepping closer to Sarah. "Emma, honey, your dad and I are just talking," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. But Emma wasn't buying it. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with something that looked like disgust. "You always make her sad," Emma said, her voice small but certain. "Marcus doesn't make her cry. Marcus makes her laugh." The words hit me like a physical blow. In my daughter's 8-year-old mind, I was the villain in this story. The man who made Mommy unhappy, while Marcus was the hero who brought smiles and motorcycle rides and ice cream promises. "Emma, that's not—" I started. "I wish Marcus was my dad instead," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "He's nicer than you. He plays games with me. He doesn't work all the time. Mom smiles when he's here." The kitchen went silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my world ending. Sarah looked stricken. "Emma, you don't mean that." But I could see in my daughter's face that she did mean it. Every word. In her mind, I was the problem that needed to be solved, and Marcus was the solution. I stood there for a long moment, looking at my wife and daughter, feeling like a stranger in my own house. Then I made a decision that surprised even me. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay?" Sarah frowned. "If Marcus makes you both happier than I do, then maybe that's where you should be." I picked up my phone, deleted the video, and looked at Sarah. "You're free to go. Both of you." "David, wait. No." I held up my hand. "Emma's right. I work too much. I'm stressed. I don't make you laugh anymore. And apparently, I don't make either of you happy." I looked at my daughter, whose face had gone uncertain. "If you want Marcus to be your dad, then go be with him." I walked to the door, grabbed my keys, and turned back one more time. "I'll be at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. You can have the house, Sarah. You can have whatever makes you happy. But you can't have me waiting around to be the bad guy in your love story anymore." And with that, I left my own birthday party, before it even started. I spent that night at the Hampton Inn on Route 9, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how I'd become the villain in my own life. Room 237. I'll never forget that number. The place where I officially became a man whose wife preferred her ex and whose daughter wished he was someone else entirely. My phone buzzed constantly. Sarah calling, texting, leaving voicemails that started angry and gradually became desperate. I didn't answer. What was the point? She'd made her choice long before I found that video. I was just catching up to reality. The next morning, I drove straight to Peterson & Associates, the law firm that handled our real estate closings. Margaret Peterson was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen every kind of divorce Springfield had to offer. "David Mitchell," she said, shaking my hand. "I heard you might be coming in. Small town, big mouths. News travels fast. Faster when it involves the Webb family. Marcus's father owns half the commercial real estate downtown. His mother runs the country club. They're influential." I hadn't thought about that. Marcus wasn't just some random guy. He was Springfield royalty. Old money, old connections, old power. And here I was, a restaurant manager who'd worked his way up from washing dishes. "Does that matter legally?" I asked. "No, but it might matter socially. You prepared for that?" I wasn't prepared for any of this. But I nodded anyway. The paperwork was straightforward. No-fault divorce, joint custody of Emma, equitable distribution of assets. I signed everything with a strange sense of relief. It felt like finally acknowledging something that had been true for months. My marriage was over. When I got home that afternoon, Sarah's car was in the driveway, along with a familiar black BMW. Marcus's car. Of course. I found them in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch like they were discussing the weather instead of the end of my family. Marcus stood when I walked in, tall, athletic, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. "David," he said, extending his hand, "I think we should talk." I looked at his hand like it was a snake. "About what? How long you've been screwing my wife? Whether you prefer our bed or hotel rooms? What exactly do you want to discuss, Marcus?" Sarah flinched. "David, please." "Please what? Please pretend this is all very civilized? Please act like you didn't blow up our family?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. "Where's Emma?" "Upstairs. She doesn't need to hear this." "Hear what? The truth?" "She already knows the truth, Sarah. She told me last night, remember? She wishes Marcus was her father." Marcus cleared his throat. "Look, David, I know this is difficult." "Do you?" I turned to face him fully. "Do you know what it's like to find out your wife has been cheating through anonymous video? Do you know what it's like to have your daughter tell you she wishes you were someone else? Because if you do, then yeah, you know exactly how difficult this is." "I never meant for it to happen this way," Sarah said quietly. "How did you mean for it to happen? Were you planning to tell me eventually, or just let me figure it out when Emma started calling him Dad?" The look on Sarah's face told me I'd hit closer to the truth than I'd intended. "Jesus," I said. "You were going to let her call him Dad, weren't you?" "It's complicated," Marcus said. "Emma's been asking questions about why her parents don't seem happy together. Kids notice things." "Kids notice things," I repeated. "That's your defense? My 8-year-old daughter noticed that Mommy's boyfriend makes her happier than Daddy does?" "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." I sat down in my recliner, the one piece of furniture in this room that felt like mine. "Let me ask you something, Marcus. When did this start? The affair, I mean. I want dates." Sarah and Marcus exchanged a look. "It doesn't matter when," Sarah began. "It matters to me. Humor me." Another look between them. Marcus answered, "About 6 months ago." 6 months. I did the math. That was right around when you started coming around to help with the yard work, when you fixed our fence, when you taught Emma to ride her bike. I looked at Sarah. "You've been playing house with him for half a year." "It wasn't like that," Sarah protested. "What was it like?" Silence. "Here's what I think it was like," I continued. "I think you two rekindled whatever you had in college. I think you decided I was the obstacle to your happiness. I think you used our daughter to normalize his presence here. And I think you were planning to slowly ease me out until Emma was so attached to Marcus that leaving me would seem like the natural thing to do." More silence. "Am I wrong?" "You're making it sound calculated," Marcus said. "Wasn't it?" Sarah started crying again. "We fell in love, David. I'm sorry it happened, but it did. I can't help how I feel." "You fell in love," I repeated. "While you were married to me. While you were raising my daughter. While you were sleeping in my bed and eating dinner at my table and taking vacations with my money." "It's not about money, isn't it? Because Marcus here comes from money. Real money. The kind that buys motorcycles and takes spontaneous trips to Boston and promises little girls ice cream whenever they want it." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I stood up. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been Sarah asking for a divorce before she started sleeping with you. Fair would have been keeping my daughter out of your relationship until the divorce was final." Fair would have been not making me the bad guy in Emma's mind while you played the fun uncle who might become her new daddy. We never told Emma anything inappropriate, Sarah said. You didn't have to. Kids aren't stupid, Sarah. They watch. They listen. They draw conclusions. And the conclusion Emma drew is that Marcus would make a better father than me. I walked to the window and looked out at the yard where Marcus had fixed our fence, where he'd taught Emma to ride her bike, where he'd slowly inserted himself into our lives like he belonged there. You know what the funny part is? I said without turning around. I might have understood if you'd just been honest. If you'd come to me and said you weren't happy, that you wanted something different, that you'd met someone else. I would have been hurt, but I would have respected the honesty. David. But instead, you made me the villain. You let our daughter think I was the problem that needed to be solved. You turned my own child against me to make your affair easier to justify. I turned back to face them. That's what I can't forgive. Not the cheating, not even the lying, but using Emma to make me feel like the failure in this family while you two played happy couple behind my back. The room went quiet, except for Sarah's sniffling. So, here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm moving out tonight. You can have the house, Sarah. You can have Marcus. You can have whatever life makes you happy. But Emma spends every other weekend with me, and I get her Wednesday nights. That's not negotiable. Of course, Sarah said quickly. I would never. Yes, you would. You already have. You've been negotiating my relationship with my daughter for months, making Marcus the fun option and me the obligation. I headed for the stairs. I'm going to pack some things and say goodbye to Emma. Then I'm leaving. When I come back for my stuff, I'd prefer if Marcus wasn't here. David, wait, Marcus called. I stopped on the bottom step. What? I want you to know that I'll take good care of them. I looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd systematically replaced me in my own home, who'd won my daughter's affection while I was working to pay for the life he was now inheriting. I'm sure you will, I said. You've had 6 months of practice. Moving into a one-bedroom apartment at 38 felt like admitting defeat. The Riverside Gardens complex wasn't fancy. Beige walls, basic appliances, thin walls that let me hear my neighbor's TV until midnight. But it was mine, and after weeks of feeling like a stranger in my own house, that mattered more than I'd expected. My first weekend with Emma was awkward. She spent most of Saturday asking when she could go home, whether Marcus was going to take Mom on the motorcycle ride he'd promised, and why my new place didn't have a pool like Marcus's condo did. Do you like it here, Dad? She asked on Sunday morning, picking at the pancakes I'd made from a box mix. I'm getting used to it. Mom says you wanted to live here. She says you decided to move out. I set down my coffee cup carefully. What else did Mom say? That sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out, and that Marcus is helping her not be sad anymore. There it was. Even in Emma's 8-year-old translation, the message was clear. I was the one who left, and Marcus was the one who stayed to fix what I'd broken. Do you miss me during the week? I asked. Emma nodded, but there was something hesitant about it. Yeah, but Marcus has been teaching me guitar, and he's really good at math homework, and he makes Mom laugh at dinner. Each sentence was like a small cut. My replacement wasn't just taking over my role, he was apparently better at it. That afternoon, when I dropped Emma back at the house, I saw Marcus's motorcycle in the driveway, a Harley Davidson that probably cost more than my car. Emma ran toward the front door, calling Marcus, before she even got inside. Sarah met me on the porch. She looked good, better than she had in months, relaxed, happy. How was the weekend? She asked. Fine. She seems to be adjusting. David, I want you to know that we're being careful about boundaries. Marcus isn't trying to replace you. I watched through the window as Emma launched herself into Marcus's arms, chattering excitedly about our weekend while he listened with the kind of patience I'd rarely managed after a long day at work. Looks like he's doing a pretty good job whether he's trying or not, I said. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Work, my empty apartment, weekend visits with Emma where she talked increasingly about Marcus and decreasingly about missing me. I told myself it was normal. Kids adapt. They move on. They attach to the people who are present in their daily lives. But it still stung every time she mentioned something Marcus had done. Somewhere he'd taken her. Some way he'd made her week better. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in October. I was at Murphy's Tavern, the kind of dive bar where restaurant managers go to complain about staff and drink away the stress of dealing with health inspectors and difficult customers. I was nursing my second beer when Jake Morrison and Pete Hendricks walked in. Jake and Pete had been my closest friends since high school. We'd been groomsmen in each other's weddings, coached Little League together, spent countless weekends watching football and grilling burgers. They were the guys I'd called when I needed help moving, when I wanted to celebrate a promotion, when I just needed to blow off steam. But I hadn't heard from either of them since the divorce news broke 6 weeks ago. They saw me at the bar and exchanged a look I'd seen before. The look people give each other when they're deciding whether to acknowledge someone they'd rather avoid. Jake approached first. "David, how are you holding up?" "Been better, been worse." I gestured to the empty stools next to me. "Drink?" Another look between them. Pete shook his head slightly. "Actually, we can't stay long," Jake said. "Meeting some people for dinner." "Anyone I know?" More uncomfortable silence. "Marcus is having a party this weekend," Pete said finally. "Sarah and Emma will be there. We thought you should know in case you heard about it and wondered why you weren't invited." The words hit me like a slap. "Marcus is having a party." "Yeah, at his place. Pool party, barbecue, kid-friendly." "And you're going." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Look, David, we've all known Marcus since high school. His dad gave Pete's construction company half its commercial contracts. My wife and Sarah have been friends forever. This whole situation is complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. "We're trying to stay neutral," Pete added. "Neutral." I took a long sip of my beer. "How exactly does one stay neutral when your friend's wife cheats on him with her ex-boyfriend?" "Come on, man," Jake said. "It's not that simple. You and Sarah were having problems. Everyone could see it. And Marcus, he's a good guy. He's not trying to hurt anyone." "He's not trying to hurt anyone," I said slowly. "He just happened to sleep with my wife for 6 months, win over my daughter, and take over my life. But hey, he's not trying to hurt anyone." "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Pete said. "Sarah's happy. Emma's happy. Maybe it's time to move on." I stared at them, these men I'd considered my closest friends for 20 years, and realized I was looking at strangers. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You're telling me that because Marcus's daddy has money and influence and because my wife seems happier with her new boyfriend, I should just accept that my friends are choosing them over me." "It's not about choosing sides," Jake protested. "Isn't it? Because it sounds like you already chose. You're going to Marcus's party, where my ex-wife will be playing happy family with her new boyfriend, and my daughter will be calling another man the fun guy in her life. And you think I should be okay with that because everyone's happy except me." "David." "No." I stood up and threw a 20 on the bar. "You know what? You're right. It is time to move on. Thanks for making that clear." I headed for the door, but Pete's voice stopped me. "You're being dramatic, David. This doesn't have to change anything between us." I turned back to face them. "It already has. The moment you decided that Marcus's money and Sarah's happiness were more important than 20 years of friendship, it changed everything." "That's not fair," Jake said. "Fair?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to me. "You want to know what's not fair? Having your best friends tell you to get over your wife's affair because the other guy throws better parties." I left them sitting there and drove home to my empty apartment, where I spent the rest of the night realizing that I hadn't just lost my wife and my daily relationship with my daughter, I'd lost my entire social circle. Because in Springfield, money talks, and Marcus Webb had more of it than a restaurant manager ever would. The pool party happened on Saturday. I knew because Emma couldn't stop talking about it during our weekend visit the following week. Marcus has this huge pool with a water slide, she gushed over breakfast. And he made hamburgers on this giant grill, and Jake and Pete were there with their kids, and everyone said what a nice house it was. I focused on cutting my pancakes into precise squares. Sounds fun. Mom looked really pretty in her new bathing suit. Marcus bought it for her. It's blue, like her eyes. Emma paused, studying my face. Are you sad you missed it? I wasn't invited, sweetheart. Why not? Marcus said you could come if you wanted to. I looked up from my pancakes. Marcus said what? He told Mom that you were welcome any time, that he doesn't want there to be weird feelings between you guys. Emma's 8-year-old logic kicked in. Maybe you could be friends. Then we could all hang out together. The innocence in her voice was heartbreaking. She had no idea that what she was describing, one big happy family with Daddy and Mommy's boyfriend all getting along, was a special kind of hell for me. It's more complicated than that, Em. But why? Marcus is really nice. He asks about you sometimes. He wants to make sure you're okay. That stopped me cold. He asks about me? Yeah. He says he feels bad that things are hard for you. He told Mom maybe they should invite you for dinner sometime so you don't have to eat alone. I set down my fork. Marcus felt bad for me. Marcus wanted to invite me to dinner so I wouldn't be lonely. Marcus was positioning himself as the magnanimous winner who could afford to be generous to the loser he'd replaced. The rage that hit me was so sudden and intense that I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to get it under control. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection, trying to process what I'd just heard. It wasn't enough that Marcus had taken my wife and won my daughter's affection. Now he wanted to be the bigger man, the gracious victor who could extend pity to the poor divorced guy eating microwave dinners alone. When I came back to the kitchen, Emma was looking at me with concern. Are you okay, Dad? I'm fine, just tired. But I wasn't fine. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I was genuinely angry. Not hurt, not confused, not sad, angry. The anger stayed with me through the rest of the weekend and into the following week. It simmered while I worked, while I ate dinner alone, while I tried to watch TV in my empty apartment. By Thursday, it had crystallized into something harder and more focused. I was going to talk to Marcus, face to face. Man to man. I knew where he worked, Webb & Associates, the family real estate firm downtown. Their offices were in the nicest building on Main Street, all glass and granite with a lobby that screamed money and success. The receptionist was a young blonde who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Can I help you? I'm here to see Marcus Webb. Do you have an appointment? No, but I think he'll want to see me. Tell him David Mitchell is here. She made a phone call, spoke quietly, then hung up with a confused expression. He'll be right out. Marcus appeared 2 minutes later, looking genuinely surprised. He was wearing another expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, everything about him screaming success and confidence. David, this is unexpected. I bet it is. Can we talk privately? He glanced around the lobby, which was starting to attract curious looks from other employees. Of course. Come on back to my office. His office was exactly what I'd expected. Corner location, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that cost more than I made in 6 months. Family photos on the desk, including one of him with Sarah and Emma at what looked like a carnival. When was that taken? I asked, pointing to the photo. Marcus followed my gaze. Last month, we took Emma to the fall festival. Ah, the happy family. He sat behind his desk, gesturing for me to take the chair across from him. David, what's this about? I remained standing. Emma tells me you've been asking about me, checking on my well-being, wanting to make sure I'm okay. I have been concerned. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't pretend this is about concern. This is about you wanting to be the good guy in this story. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. You've got everything you wanted. My wife, my daughter's affection, my friends, my life. But that's not enough, is it? You also want to be the magnanimous winner who can afford to be generous to the loser. That's not how I see this situation. No? Then how do you see it? Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I see a complicated situation where people got hurt, but where ultimately everyone ended up where they needed to be. Everyone ended up where they needed to be, I repeated. That's an interesting way to put it. So I needed to be alone in a one-bedroom apartment, watching my daughter fall in love with her mother's boyfriend? Sarah wasn't happy, David. She hadn't been happy for a long time. And you were just the knight in shining armor who happened to be available to fix that. I didn't plan for this to happen. Bullshit. The word came out harder than I'd intended. You've been circling my family.
In my house! You bastard!
Relax, man. It's just business.
Please, don't shoot!
Get off!
You won't do it. You don't have the guts.
Don't! Please don't shoot him! Please! I'm begging you! Don't do this! No! Please, no!
For 2 years, playing the helpful friend, ingratiating yourself with my daughter, positioning yourself as the better option. You planned every bit of this. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Marcus, when did you first sleep with my wife? And don't lie to me. I've got nothing left to lose, so I might as well have the truth. A long pause. Then, about 8 months ago. 8 months? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. So, when you were helping fix our fence last spring, you were already sleeping with Sarah. It wasn't like that. What was it like? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you spent 8 months systematically replacing me in my own home while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for the life you were stealing. Marcus stood up, his composure finally cracking. I didn't steal anything. Sarah made a choice. After you spent months manipulating that choice. After you made yourself indispensable to her and irresistible to my daughter. Emma likes me because I pay attention to her. Emma likes you because you had the luxury of being the fun guy while I was the one working to keep a roof over her head and food on the table. We were both standing now, facing each other across his expensive desk. You want to know the truth, David? Marcus said, his voice cold. Sarah was miserable with you. She felt ignored, unappreciated, taken for granted. Emma barely saw you because you were always at work. I didn't steal your family. You neglected them until they found someone who wouldn't. The words hit like physical blows, partly because there was truth in them. So this is my fault, I said quietly. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm saying that sometimes relationships end, and sometimes people find happiness somewhere else. And sometimes people like you see an opportunity and take it, regardless of who gets hurt. Marcus walked around the desk until he was standing directly in front of me. You know what your real problem is, David? You can't accept that Sarah chose me. You can't accept that Emma prefers spending time with me. You can't accept that your friends like me better. So you're looking for someone to blame instead of asking yourself why everyone in your life is happier without you in it. The rage that had been building for weeks finally boiled over. I grabbed Marcus by his expensive tie and slammed him back against the window. He was taller than me, but I had 20 pounds of muscle from years of restaurant work and a lifetime of anger fueling my strength. You arrogant piece of shit, I said through gritted teeth. You think because you've got money and connections and a pretty face that you're better than me? You think you deserve my life more than I do? Marcus tried to push me away, but I tightened my grip on his tie. Here's what really happened, Marcus. You saw a woman who was going through a rough patch in her marriage, and instead of encouraging her to work things out with her husband, you saw an opportunity. You moved in like a predator, offering yourself as the easy solution to her problems. David, let go. And when you had her hooked, you went after my daughter. Not because you care about her, but because you knew that winning Emma was the key to making Sarah choose you permanently. I released his tie and stepped back, breathing hard. You want to know why everyone's happier without me? Because you made sure they would be. You spent months positioning yourself as everything I wasn't: available, attentive, fun, wealthy. You made me the problem and yourself the solution. Marcus straightened his tie, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You're delusional, he said. And you're pathetic. Sarah and Emma are better off without you, and deep down you know it. I stared at him for a long moment, memorizing his face, his arrogance, his certainty that he'd won and I'd lost. Maybe they are, I said finally. But you know what, Marcus? I'm done being the gracious loser in your success story. I'm done pretending this was all some natural evolution that just happened to work out perfectly for you. I headed for the door, then turned back. Enjoy my life, Marcus. But remember, if you could steal it from me, someone else can steal it from you. And with that, I walked out of his office, past the shocked receptionist, and into the afternoon sun, finally knowing exactly what I was going to do. That night, I sat in my apartment with a legal pad and wrote down everything I knew about Marcus Webb. His family connections, his business dealings, his habits, his weaknesses. If he wanted to play games, I was going to show him how a man with nothing left to lose could play back. The Webb family had built their fortune on real estate, but like most small-town dynasties, their success depended on reputation and relationships. Marcus wasn't just a businessman. He was a brand, and brands could be damaged. I started with social media. Marcus was active on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, posting photos of his success, his travels, his perfect life, including recent photos with Sarah and Emma that made my stomach turn but gave me exactly what I needed. The photos told a story: successful businessman playing happy family with his new girlfriend and her daughter, expensive restaurants, weekend trips, Emma laughing as Marcus taught her to play tennis at his country club. But they also told another story if you knew when to look for the timestamps. I cross-referenced the dates with my own records, my work schedule, Emma's school events, family obligations. The pattern that emerged was damning. Marcus had been taking Sarah and Emma on these adventures during times when I was working or when Emma was supposed to be with me. The tennis lesson happened during my custody weekend, meaning Sarah had violated our agreement to let Marcus play daddy while I sat alone in my apartment. The expensive restaurant photos were from a Tuesday night in September when Sarah told me she was taking Emma to her mother's house. Instead, they'd been at Chez Laurent, the most expensive restaurant in the county, with Marcus picking up what was probably a $300 tab. I documented everything, printed everything, organized it all in a folder that grew thicker each night. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Emma herself. During our next weekend visit, she was showing me photos on Sarah's old iPhone, the one Sarah had given her to use for games and videos. "Look, Dad, this is when Marcus took us to Boston." She scrolled through dozens of photos from a weekend trip I knew nothing about. Marcus and Sarah holding hands on the Freedom Trail. Emma riding the carousel at Faneuil Hall. The three of them at dinner in what looked like the most expensive restaurant in the city. "When was this, sweetheart?" 2 weeks ago. It was so fun. Marcus got us a hotel room with 2 beds, and we had room service for breakfast. 2 weeks ago. When Emma was supposed to be with me for our custody weekend. When Sarah told me Emma was sick and needed to stay home. I kept my voice casual. Can I see the other pictures? Emma handed me the phone happily, eager to share her adventure. As I scrolled through the photos, I found something even more interesting than the custody violation. In the background of one restaurant photo, I spotted Jake Morrison and his wife sitting at another table. They were clearly with Marcus's group. Jake was raising his glass in a toast toward Marcus's table. My so-called best friend hadn't just chosen Marcus over me. He'd been actively socializing with them, celebrating their relationship, participating in activities that violated my custody agreement. Emma, was Uncle Jake in Boston with you? Yeah. And Aunt Lisa. They came up for the weekend too. Marcus rented this big house and we all stayed there. A big house, a group vacation. My ex-wife, her boyfriend, my daughter, and my former best friends all playing happy family while I sat alone thinking Emma was sick at home. The betrayal was so complete, so carefully orchestrated that I actually felt impressed by the scope of it. But I also felt something else. Clarity. These people had written me out of their story so thoroughly that they'd forgotten I still existed. They'd gotten sloppy, careless, confident that I was too broken or too pathetic to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. That night, I made copies of everything. The photos, the dates, the custody violations, the evidence of Sarah's lies about Emma's whereabouts. I organized it all into a comprehensive file that told the story of a systematic campaign to alienate me from my daughter while violating our legal custody agreement. But that was just the legal ammunition. For the real war, I needed something more personal. I started with Jake Morrison. Jake's construction company depended on commercial contracts, many of which came from the Webb family. But Jake also did residential work, and his reputation in that market depended on trust and reliability. I knew Jake's business practices because we'd been friends for 20 years. I knew about the corners he cut, the permits he sometimes skipped, the cash payments he preferred for smaller jobs. I knew because he'd bragged about it over beers, confident that his friend would never use the information against him. I also knew about his marriage problems. Lisa Morrison had been having an affair with her personal trainer for 6 months. Jake didn't know, but I'd seen them together at a hotel restaurant during one of my business lunches. I'd kept quiet because Jake was my friend, but Jake wasn't my friend anymore. I made a few phone calls to the city planning office, asking innocent questions about permit requirements for some of Jake's recent jobs. I requested public records for work done at addresses I knew he'd cut corners on. Within a week, I had documentation of 3 permit violations and 2 jobs that hadn't been properly inspected. Nothing criminal, but enough to cause serious problems for his business license if the information reached the right people. As for his marriage, that required a more delicate touch. I created an anonymous email account and sent Lisa Morrison a simple message. Your husband's friends are talking about your Tuesday afternoon activities. Thought you should know people are starting to notice. I didn't mention the trainer specifically. I didn't have to. Lisa would know exactly what I was talking about, and she'd know that her secret was out. The beauty of it was that she'd assume the leak came from Jake's social circle, the same people who'd chosen Marcus over me. She'd suspect that Jake had been gossiping about their marriage problems, or that someone in their group had spotted her and reported back. It would create paranoia and suspicion in the very social circle that had excluded me. Pete Hendricks was next. Pete's weakness wasn't business or marriage. It was his son Danny, a senior in high school who was being recruited by several colleges for baseball. Danny Hendricks was a good kid, but he'd made some typical teenage mistakes. Last spring, he'd been at a party where there was underage drinking. The party got broken up by police, but Danny hadn't been arrested because Pete had connections in the department. However, the incident was still on file, and college recruiters took character issues seriously, especially when they involved alcohol. I didn't have to do anything illegal or unethical. I simply made sure that the right people knew about the incident. A casual conversation with a sports reporter who covered high school athletics. A concerned email to the athletic director at Danny's top choice school, expressing worry about the character of students they were recruiting. Again, I didn't lie or fabricate anything. I simply made sure that information which had been quietly buried became visible to the people who would care about it. Within 2 weeks, Danny's recruitment status changed dramatically. Schools that had been offering scholarships suddenly went quiet. His top choice school withdrew their offer entirely. Pete would never be able to prove I was behind it, but he'd suspect. And the knowledge that his betrayal of our friendship had cost his son a college scholarship would eat at him for years. But Marcus was the main target, and for him, I had something special planned. The Webb family's real estate empire was built on relationships and reputation. They weren't just selling properties, they were selling the Webb name, the Webb connections, the Webb guarantee of quality and reliability. But every family business has secrets, and I'd been in Springfield long enough to know where some of those secrets were buried. Marcus's father, Richard Webb Sr., had built the family fortune through aggressive business practices that hadn't always been entirely legal. Nothing major, just the kind of small-town corruption that involved favorable zoning decisions, expedited permits, and city contracts that went to the right bidders. Most of it was old news, statute of limitations long expired, but some of it was more recent, and some of it involved Marcus directly. I spent 3 weeks researching property records, city council meeting minutes, and zoning board decisions. I cross-referenced dates and dollar amounts, traced ownership transfers and permit applications. What I found was a pattern of preferential treatment that would be very embarrassing if it became public knowledge. The Webb family had received favorable zoning variances for 3 major developments in the past 5 years. Each variance had been approved despite significant public opposition. Each approval had come after substantial donations to the campaigns of city council members who voted in favor of the variances. Again, nothing technically illegal. But the optics were terrible, especially in a town where people were already struggling with rising property taxes and limited affordable housing. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, complete with documentation and timeline. Then I sent copies to the Springfield Gazette, the regional newspaper, and 3 local television stations. I also sent copies to the State Attorney General's office and the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. I didn't expect criminal charges. The evidence wasn't strong enough for that. But I did expect investigations, negative publicity, and serious damage to the Webb family's reputation. The story broke on a Tuesday morning in November. Local real estate dynasty under investigation for possible corruption was the headline in the Gazette. By noon, it was the lead story on all 3 local television stations. By evening, Richard Webb Sr. was giving defensive interviews. Marcus was refusing to comment, and the Webb and Associates office was surrounded by reporters. The investigation would take months, and it might not lead to charges. But the damage to their reputation was immediate and severe. Within a week, 2 major commercial clients had canceled contracts with Webb and Associates. The city council announced they were reviewing all zoning decisions involving the Webb family. The state attorney general confirmed they were opening a formal investigation. Marcus's perfect life was starting to crack. But I wasn't done yet. The corruption story dominated local news for 2 weeks. Marcus went from small-town golden boy to the face of everything people hated about wealthy families buying influence. His social media accounts, once full of confident posts about success and happiness, went silent. But the real satisfaction came from watching my former friends scramble to distance themselves from the fallout. Jake Morrison's permit violations made the news 3 days after the Webb story broke. The headline was smaller: "Local contractor under investigation for building code violations." But in a town like Springfield, it might as well have been front page of the New York Times. Jake's business phone stopped ringing almost immediately. His wife Lisa filed for divorce the same week, citing irreconcilable differences, but everyone knew about the affair by then. The anonymous email had done its work, spreading suspicion and paranoia through their social circle until someone actually caught her with the trainer. Pete Hendricks watched his son's baseball career implode as more colleges learned about the underage drinking incident. Danny went from full-ride scholarship prospect to community college fallback in a matter of weeks. Pete knew I was behind it. He showed up at my apartment on a Thursday night, drunk and angry and looking for a fight. "You son of a bitch," he said when I opened the door. "You destroyed my kid's future." "Did I? Or did you do that when you chose Marcus Webb over 20 years of friendship?" "Danny never did anything to you." "Neither did I, Pete. But that didn't stop you from cutting me out of your life the moment it became convenient." He swung at me, a wild, drunk punch that I easily avoided. He stumbled, caught himself against the door frame, and started crying. He was going to state, David, full scholarship. Baseball was his ticket out of this town. And my daughter was my ticket to meaning something in this world. But you helped Marcus take that away from me, so forgive me if I don't feel sorry for you. I helped him to his feet, not out of kindness, but because I didn't want him collapsing in my hallway. You want to know the difference between us, Pete? When you betrayed me, I lost everything and handled it alone. When I fought back, you came crying to me about how unfair it is. He left without another word, and I never saw him again. But Marcus was the prize, and Marcus required a more personal touch. The corruption investigation had damaged his family's business and reputation, but Marcus himself was still living his perfect life with my wife and daughter. He'd weathered the storm, kept his head down, and waited for the news cycle to move on to something else. What he hadn't counted on was me having one more card to play. The custody violations I'd documented gave me legal grounds to request a modification of our custody agreement, but more importantly, they gave me leverage to demand something else entirely. I called Sarah on a Sunday evening, when I knew Marcus would be there, when I knew Emma would be within earshot. "We need to talk," I said when she answered. "David, if this is about the news stories..." "It's not about the news stories. It's about the photos Emma showed me from your Boston trip, the one that happened during my custody weekend, the one where you told me she was too sick to visit." Silence. "I have documentation of every custody violation from the past 6 months, Sarah. Photos, dates, witnesses. I also have evidence that you've been deliberately interfering with my relationship with Emma, using my work schedule against me, and allowing Marcus to position himself as a replacement father figure. David, please, I'm not finished. I have proof that you lied to me about Emma's whereabouts on at least 12 occasions, that you've taken her out of state without my permission, and that you've allowed Marcus to make parental decisions without consulting me." I could hear her breathing, could picture her standing in the kitchen where I used to live, probably with Marcus hovering nearby trying to hear both sides of the conversation. Any family court judge would be very interested in this pattern of behavior, especially combined with the evidence that Marcus has been systematically alienating Emma's affections from her father. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "I want honesty. For once in this whole nightmare, I want the truth." "About what?" "About how long this has been planned. About whether you ever intended to work on our marriage, or if you were just waiting for the right moment to leave. About whether you care at all that you've destroyed my relationship with my daughter." A long pause. Then, "Can we meet somewhere? To talk?" "No. We can talk right now with Marcus listening, or we can talk in front of a judge. Your choice." Another pause. I could hear muffled conversation in the background, Sarah covering the phone, talking to Marcus. "Okay," she said finally. "What do you want to know?" "When did you decide you were leaving me?" "David, the truth, Sarah, when?" "About a year ago, maybe longer. A year ago, before Marcus came back into the picture, before the affair started. She'd been planning her exit strategy long before she'd found her replacement. So the marriage counseling we talked about, the vacation we planned, all of those conversations about working things out, that was all bullshit. I thought maybe we could fix things, but then Marcus showed up and gave you an easier option." It wasn't like that. What was it like? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you spent a year planning to leave me, then used Marcus as your exit strategy while systematically turning my daughter against me. I never turned Emma against you. Really? Then explain to me why my 8-year-old daughter thinks Marcus would make a better father than me. Explain to me why she knows more about his life than mine. Explain to me why she talks about him like he's the most important man in her world. Silence. You want to know what the worst part is, Sarah? It's not that you cheated. It's not even that you lied. It's that you used our daughter as a weapon against me. You let her get attached to Marcus, knowing it would hurt me. You encouraged their relationship knowing it would make me feel replaced. That's not true. It is true. And you know it's true. You turned my own child into evidence that Marcus is better for your family than I am. I could hear her crying now, but I felt no sympathy. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stop violating our custody agreement. You're going to stop taking Emma places during my time without my permission. And you're going to stop using her as a prop in your relationship with Marcus. And if we don't? Then I take everything I've documented to family court, and we let a judge decide whether a mother who lies about her daughter's whereabouts and allows her boyfriend to interfere with the father-daughter relationship deserves primary custody. You wouldn't. Try me. I've got nothing left to lose, Sarah. You made sure of that. I hung up and sat in my empty apartment, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Control. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't reacting to their moves. I was making them react to mine. The next morning, I received a text from Marcus. We need to talk. I ignored it. He called twice. I let it go to voicemail. The third time he called, I answered. What? David, I think there's been a misunderstanding. About what? About the custody situation. Sarah's very upset. She thinks you're going to try to take Emma away. I'm going to enforce the custody agreement we already have. If that upsets Sarah, maybe she should have thought about that before she started violating it. Look, we can work this out. There's no need to involve lawyers or courts. We? I laughed. There is no we, Marcus. You're not Emma's father, you're not my friend, and you're not part of this conversation. I care about Emma. You care about keeping your perfect life intact. You care about not having your role as replacement daddy disrupted by inconvenient legal realities. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what would be fair, Marcus. Fair would be Emma having a father who's present in her daily life instead of relegated to every other weekend. Fair would be me not having to compete with your money and your motorcycle and your country club for my daughter's affection. I never tried to replace you. Bullshit. You've spent the last year systematically inserting yourself into every aspect of Emma's life. You've been to more of her school events than I have. You've taken her on more trips, bought her more gifts, spent more time with her than her actual father. Because you were always working. Because I was supporting my family. While you were playing fun uncle with my daughter, I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for the house you're now living in. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder, more honest. What do you want, David? I want my life back. But since that's not possible, I'll settle for making sure you don't get to keep the one you stole. What does that mean? It means I'm done being the gracious loser in your success story. It means I'm done pretending this was all some natural evolution that just happened to work out perfectly for you. I hung up and spent the rest of the day preparing for what I knew would be Marcus's next move. He didn't disappoint. That evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Marcus standing in my hallway, still in his expensive suit, but looking less composed than usual. Can I come in? No. David, please. We need to end this. There's that word again. You're destroying people's lives. Am I? Or am I just making sure there are consequences for the choices people made? Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Jake Morrison's business is ruined. Pete Hendrix's kid lost his scholarship. My family's company is under investigation. How many more people are you going to hurt? As many as it takes. To accomplish what? You can't get Sarah back. You can't undo what happened. I'm not trying to get Sarah back. I'm trying to make sure that everyone who participated in destroying my life understands that actions have consequences. And Emma? What about her? You're willing to put her through a custody battle just to get revenge on us? That stopped me. Because he was right. Emma would be caught in the middle of whatever legal battle came next. Emma is the only reason you're not in a hospital right now, I said quietly. She's the only reason I'm using lawyers instead of my hands. But don't mistake my restraint for weakness, Marcus. And don't think for 1 second that I won't do whatever it takes to protect my relationship with my daughter. I'm not trying to take her away from you. You already have. The only question now is whether I let you keep her or fight to get her back. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much damage I was willing to inflict. What would it take? He asked finally. For what? For you to walk away. To leave us alone. I almost laughed. You think this is about money? You think you can buy your way out of this? I think you're angry and hurt, and I think there might be a way to resolve this that doesn't destroy everyone involved. There is a way. You disappear from Emma's life. You stop playing daddy to my daughter. You go back to being Sarah's boyfriend instead of trying to be our family's replacement patriarch. I can't do that. Then we have nothing to talk about. I started to close the door, but Marcus put his hand against it. David, wait. What if we shared custody? What if Emma spent equal time with both of us? Both of us? You're not her father, Marcus. But I could be. Legally. If Sarah and I got married, I could adopt Emma. She could have 2 fathers who both love her. The words hit me like a physical blow. Adoption. He wanted to legally replace me as Emma's father. Over my dead body, I said. Think about it rationally. Emma loves me. I love her. I can provide for her in ways that... I grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the hallway wall. His expensive suit wrinkled against the cheap paint. His perfect hair fell into his eyes. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I saw fear in his face. Listen to me very carefully, Marcus. You can have my wife. You can have my house, my friends, my social life. But if you try to take my daughter, if you try to adopt her, if you try to replace me legally, I will destroy you in ways you can't imagine. I tightened my grip on his throat. The corruption investigation, the business problems, the reputation damage, that was me being nice. You try to take my daughter, and I'll show you what I can do when I stop playing by the rules. I released him and stepped back. Marcus rubbed his throat, his composure completely shattered. You're insane, he whispered. I'm a father, and you just threatened to take away the only thing I have left. Marcus straightened his suit and backed away from my door. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Because tomorrow morning, I'm filing for emergency modification of custody based on the violations I've documented. And unless you want Emma to hear in court about how Mommy's boyfriend has been trying to replace Daddy, you'll back off and let me be her father. Marcus left without another word. 2 hours later, Sarah called. David, Marcus told me what happened. You can't be serious about the adoption thing. I'm serious about protecting my daughter from people who think she's a prize to be won. She loves him. She's 8 years old, Sarah. She loves whoever buys her ice cream and takes her on trips. That doesn't make him her father. He wants to be part of her life. He can be part of her life, as your boyfriend. But he's not her father, and he's never going to be her father. And if you try to make that happen, I'll fight you with everything I have. David, I'm done talking, Sarah. Tomorrow morning I'm filing papers. You can explain to Emma why Mommy and Daddy have to go to court. I hung up and spent the night preparing for war. But when morning came, my phone rang with a call I wasn't expecting. Mr. Mitchell? This is Margaret Peterson. I think you need to come in right away. We have a situation.